Okay, and we are recording for week 3, end of the first phase of phase 0. Is that how that works? Every 3 weeks? I know my advisor sent an email saying that. I was like, oh, you just finished the first part of phase 0. Good job. Anyway, this is my review and reflect for week 3. So I have these questions that I'm pulling up. Then I'll put my little box on the side so I can see how beautiful I look in this video. Okay. All right. Question number 1. Name at least 3 categories of CSS adjustments. Example, colors. All right. So, there's a bunch of ones. You can use margin to set the margin settings, or you can do like margin top, margin bottom, margin left, margin right. Same thing with border. Set the border. And it's not just, I guess, like with margin, you're not stretching just how big it is, but you can also set like background colors of the border. You can set the thickness of the border and the border style. You also, so like with colors, if you just do color, that's just going to set the color for the text for the font being used. I kept like getting thrown off by that. I'd be like trying to do like font dash color, text dash color. It's just color. But similarly, you can do background dash color, and then you can set the background color settings. And colors are actually pretty involved because, you could just write in white or black, but you can also do RGB to set like red, green, blue, and then there's all these great RGB tools online, so you can just see exactly what the numbers are you want. And then there's RGBA, which the A is for like opacity, I guess is how you say it. I haven't really thought about that. I just read it. But so like how like translucent you want a color to be, which is really nice for styling, especially with the background color feature. I pinned like a background image on my project, my 3.5 project, and that definitely helped, was being able to have like transparent colors, and I could affect how transparent it was. But let's see. I think I still need to talk about a third category of CSS adjustments. So I've talked about color. Font family, that allows you to change the text of the fonts, like Times New Roman. Font style, I guess is what that would mean. That's not what it's called, but I'm saying font family changes the font style in a given part. Okay, what are the 3 ways to link a CSS rule to an HTML document? Which one is the best and why? Okay. I feel like this is a leading question because they're saying which one is the best and why. And I think there's a more conventional way to do it that is probably better in most situations. And that's the one you're having us use, which was you have a link and then like href equals, and then you have the local link of the CSS document running up, and then rel for relation, which is a style sheet, and then I'm going to look at the third part, but it's text / CSS. Boom, boom, boom. I got right. Sorry, I do have this on here. Okay, yeah. Relation type. That's what it's called, type, and that's where you put in text / CSS. So that is one of the ways to do it. The other 2 ways, well, there's actually 3 ways, additional ways of doing it. Like there's a 4th way to do it that's kind of weird, but you're not really doing it in HTML, which is why I think you didn't include it in the question. So then you have, I think it's called inline styling, which, well, before I get into that, okay, there is actually a tag that's style, and it's a style tag, and everything inside of that, the style rules you apply in there will apply to everything within those tags. So like you'd put it, you put in the head tag. I misspoke. You put the style tag in the head tag, and that's where you can like set all your rules. But then you can also do it inline, where like if you have a paragraph in the middle of your HTML document, then inside the initial thing, then you can do things like color equals black, and put the rules, the CSS rules, basically inside the HTML document itself, within the exact section you want it. So, and then the 4th way is like you say, I wrote it down. It's like at import. That's what it was. And then in quotations, you have the name of the style sheet you're going to use with the semicolon. And that you put in the CSS sheet you're already using and allows you to reference another CSS sheet, which, like, why would you do that? And it's like, okay, well, if you have a CSS sheet you're applying, well, they explain if you have a CSS page, you have linked to a bunch of pages, but then there's another CSS page you want to attach, rather than like linking that into every single HTML page or index page, you could just import it into the first style sheet you're already using. And I need to read more about that to find out how that affects the cascading rules. Because it's like, what if you have a paragraph rule in one and a paragraph rule in the other? How would that balance out? Like, what order are they prioritized when you do at import? What is a selector? Actually, before going to that, I still need to talk about which one is the best and why. I think the first way I talked about, when you link the style sheet to the HTML document and you write it separately, it does seem to be the preferred approach, and probably like 99% of the time it is the best way to do it. It's just cleaner, it's more organized, it's easier to read. It's nice having it segregated. It also means you can do, like, if there's a way you usually like to style websites, like a basic template, it means you can have a CSS sheet you use as a starter, and then you start tacking rules based on that specific page. But I think it's also nice to be able to just focus on content on the HTML page and then focus on style on the CSS document. But, you know, if your HTML code's really simple and you're not styling it for the most part, and all you want to do is like change the font, then maybe you should just use the style header inside the HTML doc. Or if there's one paragraph you'd want to use Comic Sans for font type. I don't know why you would do that. You know, it might be good to just do it inline. Like, yeah. I mean, there's a reason certain systems become popular, but that doesn't mean the other tools suddenly become useless in every situation. Anyway, moving on. Question 3: what is a selector? And give examples of at least 3 types of selectors. So a selector with CSS, that's how you're identifying what the rules are going to be applied to that you write. So the main selector is like element selectors, like if you use P for paragraph, then all the paragraphs in the HTML document are going to be targeted by the rules you put in there. Same thing, like if you do H1, all the H1 sections of the HTML document are going to be targeted by the style rules. But 2 other types of selectors, you have your class selectors, which is you can use multiple times in the HTML document, and just in the opening tag of whatever sections you're selecting with that, you write class equals, and then you create a name that describes that class. And then in the CSS doc, you will write dot, whatever the name of the class is, and that's how you target them. And then you can do a unique ID, which ID selector, it's the same thing. HTML doc, you do ID equals for whatever section you're applying it to, whatever tags, whichever specific tag in the document. So it's not like all the paragraphs, but like if there's a specific paragraph you're trying to target. Or you can also use it in like a div section, like this div is this. And in the CSS document, you would do hashtag, the name of the ID. And the key of IDs is that you can only use them once in a document. You can use class multiple times, and it'll apply all of them, but ID, you should only have an ID used once in any given HTML document. What is the box model? Okay, let's see. I remember this order. You have the content, you have the padding, you have the border, and then you have the margin on the outside. And that's just like with CSS, because you can affect like how things are lined up. You can create background colors for the different areas, and you can set those margins on the different parts. That's why it's important to know the box model, like know exactly where you're messing with the element. So the padding like you can set the padding, and that's actually some of the rules you can create, but you can set the padding like either I want 10 pixels on all sides, or you can do top padding, left padding, right padding, bottom padding, however you want to do it. And there's more you can do that, and it's going to lead into the cascading effect of CSS. So I'm just going to launch into the next question. Explain and give an example of the cascading effect of CSS. So I'll give an example first. You could set padding and write 15 pixels. And then you're like, well, for the bottom padding, I actually want 25 pixels. So first you would write the rule padding 15 pixels. And underneath it, you would write bottom or padding dash bottom dash padding. I think it's padding dash bottom. I always look at it whenever I write it. And yeah, that's right. And then you would write 25 pixels. And what would that would do is that you have the first rule where it's creating, I forget if I said 10 or 15 pixels initially. And that would be on all the sides, and that would be applied. But then now that you have the bottom padding rule kicking in, that would, I guess supersedes a nice word to use for that. That would wind up being the dominating rule, and it would overwrite the previous rule. And now it sets 25. So cascading is the C of CSS, cascading style sheets. Or cascading style sheet. I don't know if it's singular, but it's essentially it describes how you have many rules happening in CSS, and eventually, well, it's not why they call it cascading, but like the rules will eventually conflict sometimes, and you're able to write the rules in a way where like there's a specific organization to how the rules are, the hierarchy of the rules. And I guess like a good rule of thumb is the higher the specificity of the selector, the more precedence it sets on the document. So like a ID selector is very specific because it only shows up once in the HTML. So if you say for this ID selector, these are the rules, that's going to be more important than like the class ID or just the general paragraph ID, like element ID. Or if you use the universal selector, that's like the lowest ranked of how the rules are applied because it applies to everything in the document, which is the least specific tag you could use. But also if you have rules with like equal specificity, the order they appear in the document, the last rule listed is going to be the one that's applied, or the one that you'll see applied. Which the way I like to think of that is that the rules are still being applied in order, and you're like, okay, if you had a wall in your house and you decide to paint it blue, or you decide to paint an entire room blue, it's like, see, now you've painted the whole room blue. You took time to do that. You're like, but the eastern wall I want to have red. So then you paint it red, and you already have that blue layer of paint you put there. So like both rules got applied, but the last thing you painted was red. So now you have a red wall on this one quarter of the room. Name 2 CSS techniques that assist in responsive design. So responsive design, in essence, is you're building the code so it's friendly to multiple formats and screen sizes. Like, because a lot of people now look at websites using their phones, and it's actually become almost more popular. I was just reading articles earlier this week when they were talking about responsive design, and that was part of what came up, is it used to be websites would be written with desktop computers in mind, because that's like the dominant client way of viewing the websites, but then as time has passed, people are using their phones more and more. So now, oftentimes, people are designing with mobile first as their mindset. But that being said, okay, what are CSS techniques that assist in responsive design? A huge one is app media, which is fantastic because you can say app media, then you can set the width or the height or both. It's like, and so you just like keep writing like and then next rule in parentheses. So you can set a max width or a minimum width or a max height or a minimum height, and it's saying this rule applies up to a maximum height of this, or this rule applies with a minimum height of this and taller, or you can do it with width also. And basically all the rules that are listed in that section will only be applied under those circumstances, which goes into like why I guess that'd even be a thing. Like, why? What do they mean when they say design with mobile first in mind? Is that they would build their web page imagining it being viewed on a phone, and then they would create the app media rules. Like, okay, well, if it's bigger than this, so that would be you'd probably use height and width minimum, I guess, because then you're saying these are the special set of rules if the minimum height and width is this specific size. And it's also nice because, like, if you have, I did this on my personal project, I had a video that was anchored, I forget the exact term, basically it's pinned down where it was in a fixed part of the screen and it wasn't moving when you scrolled up and down. Like, I had an absolute position. But I realized, I was like, well, with the Z-index, I gave it a high value so it would overlap anything. But then if it got this wide, suddenly the video would block all the content right in the middle of the screen. So when it came to the contact, I had it collapse rather than being in a side element now. I was like, okay, now it's just like a normal element. And so yeah, app media is really good. You can also do it app media portrait or landscape. And that's where phones and tablets come in because people can view like with their phone like this, or they can view it with their phone like this. And suddenly the dimensions of the website should be better or different. They should be different to be more accessible to the users and look good. Let's see. Okay, CSS techniques. That also system responsive design. You can set image sizes. You can set them to absolutes, saying it's going to be this many pixels wide, this many pixels tall. But you can do percentages instead. Where if you set the image, like the percentage to like 100%, then you're saying, okay, like as long as it fits, you're going to show the normal size of the image. But then, like as the web page gets smaller than 100%, the image shrinks in size as well, proportionate to the web page that's being viewed by the client. So, like, I tried doing that with the website I designed in the project, is that rather than using pixels, I tried using percentages much more and experimented with that, just so that, like, regardless of the medium and how the size of the screen that was viewing it, it would still be spaced in the general sense of how I thought the website should look. So, yes, that is responsive design. And I feel like that's the heart of, if you got good at CSS, it's really responsive design. Like, you're making it so it just looks good, regardless of the medium. And that's the questions for this week. I'm really excited with everything we've done these last few weeks. It's been a lot to learn. And I think we're starting with Ruby next week, so that'll be great. Anywho, thanks for watching these videos. They're probably longer than if you're just reading a text document. So, cheers.